Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be talking about Tom Gygax,
Oh, yeah.
the mastermind behind the Tires Plus empire. And we're going to be looking at his book, The Big Book of Small Business. And what's really fascinating to me about this book is how he kind of lays out his journey and how he attributes a lot of his success to going from being a seat-to-pants entrepreneur to an enlightened entrepreneur.
Right.
And we'll see what that exactly means as we go along this journey together.
Right.
But, he started off his story by sharing some pretty eye-opening experiences he had at Shell Oil before he decided to take the leap.
Absolutely. One of those in particular involved a trade show he was tasked with putting on for Shell,
Okay.
where he absolutely crushed it.
Yeah.
He more than doubled their sales target for the show.
Wow.
But when he went back to his district manager, instead of focusing on, the massive profit he brought in, they actually focused on a slight budget overage.
Oh, man, that sounds very frustrating.
So it was kind of this classic clash between entrepreneurial drive and corporate bureaucracy.
Right.
And the story, along with others, like having to constantly cover, extravagant expenses for his boss, just really kind of pushed him to seek a path where his effort would actually directly translate to his reward.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder how many amazing ideas are stifled in those kinds of environments where you're afraid to step out of the box, or you're constantly being pulled back.
Absolutely.
But so he took the leap.
Mm-hmm.
He decided to venture out into the world of entrepreneurship, specifically the tire industry.
Yep.
But I imagine even with a clear vision and the drive getting started was no walk in the park.
It's almost never.
Yeah.
And he actually ran into, a pretty big roadblock when he was trying to get Tires Plus off the ground.
No.
He was trying to secure funding, and he was actually rejected by 8 banks
Oh, wow.
before finally finding one that was willing to take a chance on him.
Okay.
And he attributes a lot of that success to the fact that he had a rock-solid business plan.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like a lot of times people, when they're first starting out, they have all this passion and excitement,
Sure.
but maybe not necessarily that structured plan.
Yeah.
So what did Tom see as the most critical elements of a good business plan?
Well, one that he really emphasized was the need to do a very thorough competitive analysis.
Okay.
So he was, really big on knowing your rivals inside and out.
Okay.
And that means, understanding their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And most importantly, how you're going to set yourself apart.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a great example in the book
Yeah.
with Tires Plus. Generally tire shops kind of had this reputation for being kind of grungy.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most pleasant places to be.
Not somewhere you want to hang out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So he took a very different approach. His shops were clean. They were upscale. He even had things like cappuccino machines
Yeah.
and play areas for kids.
That's awesome.
So it became, not just about selling tires, but about creating a really positive customer experience.
Yeah, it was more of an experience than just a...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about the whole package.
Yeah, so it's attracting the customer, but then keeping the customer as well.
Absolutely.
Now, speaking of attracting customers, how did Tom think about securing funding without losing control of his company?
So that was something that he was very adamant about. He did not want to give up control.
Right.
And he looked at all sorts of options. He looked at family and friends. He looked at angel investors.
Mm-hmm.
But he really stressed caution,
Okay.
particularly with what he called dark angels.
Okay. Interesting.
And these are basically investors that, they leverage their investment to try to seize control or maybe take more control than you're comfortable with.
So not necessarily aligned with his vision.
Exactly. And, he firmly believed that you should never compromise your vision
Right.
just to get funding.
That makes a lot of sense. It's
Yeah.
got to be a good partnership, not just someone who's going to come in and take over.
Absolutely.
You're in it for the long haul.
Yeah. And speaking of vision, I love the story of how Tires Plus got its name.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, his initial thought was Guarantee Tire,
Oh.
which, let's face it, is not the most catchy name.
Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue.
Yeah. So how did he go from that to Tires Plus?
Well, it was actually a neighbor
Okay.
that kind of gave him this, very frank feedback
Okay.
about how uninspiring and honestly how limiting that name was.
Okay.
And that sparked, this kind of brainstorming session.
Yeah.
That ultimately led to Tires Plus,
Yeah.
which is so much more impactful.
Maybe it is.
It conveys this sense of optimism.
Yeah, and a promise of more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More than just tires.
That's great. And it's such a good example of how sometimes, you think you have a great idea and just a little bit of feedback.
Yeah. Can really spark something much better.
Absolutely. And sometimes that feedback's going to come from the most unexpected sources.
Yeah.
Just be open to it.
Yeah. It's so important to surround yourself with people who are going to give you honest feedback.
Yeah.
Even if it's tough.
Absolutely.
So beyond just the name, Tom talks a lot about building a really strong team culture. What did that look like at Tires Plus?
So he actually called it the team ego.
Okay.
And what he meant by that was, individual expression was definitely encouraged.
Okay.
But it was always teamwork that reigned supreme.
Okay.
And I always think of that quote.
Yeah.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love that.
And so this team ego really thrived on these 6 core values. They were caring, optimistic, passionate, persistent, systems, disciplined, and spirit-filled.
Okay.
And, these weren't just words on a wall. They were really embodied in the company's actions and in the leadership.
Yeah, so he kind of created an environment where everyone felt valued.
Absolutely.
And empowered. And I think that ultimately translates to a better experience for the customer as well.
Without a doubt.
Now, it's really interesting because this whole concept of team ego, it ties into his own personal journey of transformation.
Absolutely.
From being a seat-of-the-pants entrepreneur to this enlightened entrepreneur. So what was it that triggered this shift in him?
Well, he was very open about the fact that in the beginning, he was very much a seat-of-the-pants leader.
Okay.
Very driven by ego and control.
Right.
But as Tires Plus grew, he realized he needed to evolve. So he started investing in personal development.
Okay.
He actually went to therapy.
Wow.
He did a lot of self-reflection. He really focused on wellness.
Okay.
And so this personal growth that he experienced, I think that's really what ignited his belief in the power of employee development.
Yeah, so he realized the success of his company was directly tied to the growth of his people. So what were some of the ways that he invested in his employees' development?
So he actually implemented things like tuition assistance programs.
Oh, wow.
He created a lot of opportunities for internal promotion.
Okay.
So he was really trying to foster this culture of continuous learning.
Yeah.
And one of the methods that he used for training was something called the Confucius checklist.
Okay, I've heard it, I've heard it's very effective.
It is.
Can you break it down for us how it works?
Sure. It's a pretty simple process. It's got 4 steps.
Okay.
First, you tell them what needs to be done.
Okay.
So you're giving a very clear explanation of the task.
Yeah.
Then you show them how to do it.
Okay.
So you give them a demonstration.
Yeah.
Then you watch them do it, and you offer feedback. And then finally you have them do it again.
Okay, so it's really about that hands-on, iterative approach, and feedback is key.
Absolutely.
It sounds like he really created this culture of learning and growth at Tires Plus.
Yeah, he was very big on that.
But I'm also curious about his thoughts on ethical leadership and social responsibility. Did he see those as crucial to the company's success?
Absolutely. He actually called it the ethical advantage.
Oh, I like that.
So he believed that being ethical wasn't just the right thing to do, it actually gave you a competitive edge.
Right.
And he said, by having integrity in all aspects of your business, it helps you attract quality employees.
Yeah.
And it builds trust with your customers.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So did he have any specific examples of how this played out at Tires Plus?
He did. There's a story about how an entire staff at one of the Tires Plus locations signed a sympathy card for a customer whose dog had just been hit by a car.
Oh, wow.
It's a small gesture, but it really speaks volumes about the kind of culture he created.
Yeah, it's about building those authentic connections with customers.
Absolutely.
And showing them that you really do care. Now, of course, every business faces its challenges, and Tires Plus was no exception. So I'd love to hear about Tom's approach to handling crisis and navigating those inevitable storms.
Well, I think his advice really boils down to 3 key things.
Okay.
1, stay calm.
Okay.
2, develop a proactive strategy.
Okay.
And 3, rely on your team.
Okay.
He shared stories in the book about all sorts of crises that they faced at Tires Plus. Everything from, employees leaving abruptly to natural disasters.
Right.
But there was one in particular that I think really illustrates his approach.
Okay, what's that?
It was when a major competitor entered their market.
Oh, wow, that's a big one.
Yeah, they were a national chain.
Okay.
And they were posing a serious threat to Tires Plus.
Yeah.
But instead of panicking, what Tom did was he got his team together.
Okay.
And they actually developed a preemptive strike strategy.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So they remodeled their stores, they adjusted their prices.
Right.
They really focused on, making sure that their staff was ready for this increased competition.
So they kind of took it head on and said,
Absolutely.
we're going to...
They used it as an opportunity to improve.
Really embrace the challenge.
Absolutely.
Did that strategy ultimately pay off?
It did. Tires Plus not only survived the competition, they actually thrived.
That's amazing.
And I think this really illustrates Tom's belief in the ever-evolving nature of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, you can't just rest on your laurels.
Yeah. You can't get complacent.
Yeah, constantly be adapting.
Absolutely.
So what stands out to you from this part of Tom's journey?
What really strikes me is just how much emphasis he places on the human element of business.
Okay.
His entire journey really highlights how important personal growth is, how important building a supportive team culture is, and leading with integrity and ethics.
Yeah.
And these aren't just, nice to haves. These are absolutely essential ingredients for building a sustainable and fulfilling business.
I agree. It's about creating a positive impact on the world, not just chasing profits.
Absolutely.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
But there's so much more to explore in Tom's story.
There is.
What insights can our listeners apply to their own entrepreneurial journeys?
That's a good question.
We'll be back soon with more from the Deep Dive.
Yeah, definitely come back for part 2.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Tom Gagax's book, The Big Book of Small Business.
We talked a lot in the first part about his journey and his kind of personal transformation as a leader.
Right.
But I'm really curious to dive into how he actually structured Tires Plus for success.
Absolutely.
Because, it's one thing to have a vision.
Sure.
But it's a whole other challenge to turn that vision into a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, you got to have the infrastructure to support it.
Exactly.
And Tom was a really big believer in systems and processes.
Right.
He understood that, as a company expands, its systems need to evolve to keep pace.
That makes sense.
He often compared it to, the backbone of an organization, essential for support and stability.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, a strong foundation is crucial for anything, whether it's a building or a business.
Absolutely.
And one of the key systems he emphasized was establishing clear communication channels.
Okay.
He really encouraged open dialogue between different departments, regular team meetings, a culture where everyone felt comfortable sharing their ideas and concerns.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Breaking down silos and fostering collaboration is so important.
Yeah, especially as the company grows.
Right, because things can get really complex really quickly.
Absolutely.
Did he have any specific strategies for making sure those communication lines stayed open?
He did. He was a big advocate for regular one-on-one meetings between managers and their direct reports.
Okay.
And he felt that this allowed for, a more personalized connection and more direct feedback.
Yeah, so those individual check-ins can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
In building trust.
Absolutely.
Making people feel heard.
For sure.
Now, speaking of feedback, did Tom have any specific techniques for delivering constructive criticism?
He did.
Okay.
He developed something he called the sandwich technique.
Ooh, sandwich technique. I like it already.
It's a way to deliver feedback that's both direct, but also supportive.
Okay, so how does it work?
So it's actually pretty simple.
Okay.
You start by acknowledging the person's strengths and contributions. Yeah. Really emphasize the positive.
Yeah.
And then you gently address the area that needs improvement.
Okay.
And then you finish by ending on a positive note.
Okay.
Reiterate your belief in their ability to grow and succeed.
So it's like cushioning the critique.
Exactly.
With positive reinforcement.
Yeah, you're sandwiching the tough stuff between good stuff.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a good technique.
Yeah. It seems like a great way to foster a culture of continuous improvement.
Absolutely. And he was very big on that.
Which is something Tom was clearly passionate about.
Oh, yeah. He believed that complacency was the enemy of progress.
Yeah.
He really stressed the importance of strategic planning,
Okay.
regularly reviewing the company's direction and goals.
Right. So not just setting the goals, but actually coming back to them.
Absolutely. You got to revisit them, make sure you're still on track.
Yeah.
And to do that, he was a proponent of what's called a SWOT analysis.
Okay. I've heard of SWOT analysis.
Yeah, it's a great tool.
Can you break it down for us?
Sure. So it involves identifying the company's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay. So internal and external factors.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he believed that really understanding these 4 key areas was essential for developing effective strategies.
It forces you to really look at the big picture.
Absolutely.
Both inside and outside the company.
Yeah, and then you can strategize about how to leverage your strengths, mitigate weaknesses, seize opportunities, and, navigate potential threats.
Okay, so we've talked about systems, communication, feedback, strategic planning.
Mm-hmm.
What else did Tom emphasize in terms of building a well-structured organization?
Well, he was a strong advocate for investing in employee training and development.
Okay.
He believed that a company's most valuable asset was its people. And that, investing in their growth was not only ethical, but it was a smart business decision.
Yeah, I love that perspective.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that your employees are your biggest competitive advantage.
Right.
And their growth is essential to the company's success.
Absolutely.
And to achieve that growth, he was, again, a big fan of the Confucius checklist.
Okay, so how does he apply the Confucius checklist to employee training?
It's the same 4 steps as before.
Okay.
So first, you tell the employee what needs to be done, giving them a clear explanation of the task or skill. Then you show them how to do it, offering a practical demonstration.
Mm-hmm.
Then you observe them performing the task.
Okay.
And provide feedback, guidance, and correction as needed.
Yeah.
And finally, you have them repeat the task, ensuring they've mastered the skill and can perform it independently.
I love that. It's hands-on, it's iterative.
Yeah.
It really emphasizes that learning by doing.
Absolutely.
And the importance of feedback.
For sure.
It sounds like, coaching and mentoring played a big role.
Absolutely. He saw those as key responsibilities of any good leader.
And that also means delegating effectively.
Yes. Tom was a big believer in delegation.
Okay.
He saw it as a way to empower employees
Mm-hmm.
to take ownership of their work and develop their skills.
Delegation is so crucial, I think, both for the individual's growth, but also for the organization's success.
Absolutely.
But I know it can be really hard for some leaders to let go of control.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Did Tom have any tips for effective delegation?
He did, and it's pretty simple, actually.
Okay.
Be crystal clear about the task or project.
Okay.
Set clear expectations.
Yeah.
Provide the necessary resources and support.
Mm.
And then, this is the hard part, let go of the reins and trust your team to get the job done.
So it's not about micromanaging.
No, not at all.
It's about giving them the freedom
empowering them
to really own it.
Exactly. And knowing that, mistakes are going to happen.
Especially when people are learning.
Right. It's part of the process.
And Tom believed that mistakes should be viewed as opportunities for learning and improvement, not as failures to be punished.
Exactly.
It's about creating that safe space.
A growth mindset.
Where people can take risks, they can experiment, and they can grow without fear of repercussions.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about building a strong structure, fostering communication, giving feedback, strategic planning, training and development, delegation. This is a lot to take in.
It is, yeah. It's a lot of different elements that all work together
to create a successful organization.
Right.
But there's another really important piece that we touched on earlier.
Okay.
And I want to dive deeper into it now.
Sure.
It's this idea of nurturing an ethical edge and a commitment to social responsibility.
Yeah, that was really core to Tom's philosophy.
So how did he integrate ethics and social responsibility into the DNA of Tires Plus?
Well, he firmly believed that ethical behavior and giving back to the community were not only morally right, but they were actually essential ingredients for long-term success.
It's about building a business that's not just profitable, but also ethical and socially responsible.
Absolutely. It's about aligning your actions with your values.
Exactly.
And Tom really walked the talk. He has a story in the book about how he refused to let his employees dress casually, even though they wanted to, because he felt it was important to maintain a professional image for the company.
Interesting. So even something like dress code.
Yeah, it was about setting a standard.
Can reflect those values.
Absolutely.
It's about consistency. It's about integrity.
Yeah.
It's about demonstrating those values through your actions.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about internal practices.
Right.
He also extended this to how they interacted with customers
Yeah.
and the wider community.
Okay.
He believed in treating customers with respect, fairness, and transparency.
Which ultimately builds trust.
Exactly. And trust leads to loyalty.
Right. And loyal customers are the best advocates.
Absolutely.
So it all comes back around.
It does.
But it goes beyond just customer interactions, right?
Right. Tom also believed in giving back to the community.
Okay.
He encouraged his employees to get involved in local charities and causes. Tires Plus regularly supported community initiatives.
It's about recognizing that a business is part of a larger ecosystem.
Exactly. It's not an island.
And giving back is not just the right thing to do.
Right.
But it also strengthens those connections.
It does.
It makes a positive impact.
For sure.
It all comes back to Tom's philosophy of building a business that's not just successful,
Right.
but also meaningful.
It's about making a difference.
Exactly.
In the world.
Yeah, it's inspiring stuff.
It is.
So we've covered a lot of ground in terms of how Tom structured Tires Plus for success. But, there's still more to his journey.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot more we can learn from him.
For sure.
So, dear listeners, take a moment to reflect on what's resonated with you so far. What insights can you apply to your own entrepreneurial journey?
That's a great question to consider.
We'll be back soon with a final part of our deep dive.
Yeah, definitely come back.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the big book of small business. We've been talking a lot about Tom Gygax's journey with Tires Plus.
Yeah, his incredible rise to success.
Absolutely. And, we've talked about the challenges he faced early on, his commitment to ethical leadership, and all the smart strategies he used to build such a thriving organization. But, the journey doesn't end there, does it?
Right. It's one thing to lead a small startup. But what happens when that company starts to grow rapidly?
Right. How do you scale that leadership effectively?
Exactly. What new challenges did Tom encounter during that transition, and what lessons did he learn along the way?
So he was very open about the growing pains he experienced.
Okay.
There's actually a story in the book about how he brought in a consultant named Dean Batchelor to help address some of the issues that Tires Plus was facing.
Okay, interesting. And what did Dean have to say?
Well, his assessment was surprisingly blunt.
Good.
He told Tom, the biggest problem in your company is you.
Wow, I bet that was hard to hear.
It was a real wake-up call for Tom.
Yeah. Takes a lot of courage to admit that your own leadership style might be holding the company back.
Yeah.
So what did Tom need to change?
So he realized that his initial micromanaging style, which worked really well in the early stages, was actually hindering the company's growth.
Okay.
He was too controlling, too involved in every little detail, and it was stifling his team's creativity and their initiative.
I think that's a common trap that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into.
It is. That feeling that you have to do everything yourself.
Right, because no one else can do it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that kind of thinking is not sustainable.
No, it leads to burnout, and it prevents the company from reaching its full potential.
Exactly. And to Tom's credit, he recognized this, and he made a conscious effort to change his leadership style.
So how did he do that? How did he move away from micromanaging to a more empowering approach?
He started focusing on setting clear goals, providing the necessary resources and support, and then stepping back to let his team execute.
So it's about trusting your team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And empowering them to take ownership.
That must have been a difficult transition.
It was, but it was essential for the company's continued growth.
What was the impact of this shift in leadership style on the overall culture at Tires Plus?
It was huge. Employees felt more valued, more trusted, and more engaged.
Okay.
Which led to increased productivity and a lot more innovation.
Because they felt empowered to contribute their ideas.
Exactly. They knew their voices were being heard.
It's amazing how a leader's style can have such a ripple effect throughout the entire organization.
It really does. It influences everything.
Yeah.
From morale to performance.
Now, did Tom share any insights about building his leadership team as the company continued to grow?
He did. He realized that as Tires Plus expanded, he needed to surround himself with talented and capable people who could share those leadership responsibilities.
So it's about building a really strong executive team?
Yeah, a team he could trust and respect, a team that could help him steer the company towards continued success.
Sounds like he was very intentional about who he brought on board.
Oh, absolutely. He didn't just hire for technical skills.
Right.
He looked for people with strong character, a commitment to excellence, and a passion for the company's mission.
You can teach skills, but you can't teach character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And building that culture of integrity starts at the top.
Tom's leadership journey has been incredibly insightful and inspiring.
It really has.
It's a powerful reminder that business can be a force for good in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And success is about more than just profits.
Right. It's about the positive impact you have on the lives of your employees, your customers, your community.
I think that's a perfect note to wrap up our deep dive into the big book of small business.
It has been a fascinating journey.
We've covered so much ground, from Tom's early struggles as an entrepreneur to his incredible success with Tires Plus. And I think there are so many valuable lessons we can all take away from his experience.
Absolutely. Whether you're a seasoned business owner or just starting out.
Tom's story is a testament to the power of hard work, perseverance, a commitment to continuous learning, and a belief in the importance of ethical leadership.
I think that's a great takeaway.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it as engaging and thought-provoking as we did.
We encourage you to continue the conversation online, share your own insights and takeaways, and let's keep learning and growing together.
Until next time, keep diving deep.